Hello and welcome. My name is Myre and this is Inside Star Citizen for the end of July. We're still in the PTU 3.14 at the moment, but it looks like ISC is back, and with it we got some new stuff and a sprint report, so we're going to go ahead and get right into it. Let's go ahead and have a look.
For me, when it comes to exploring areas in a game, I tend to prefer when I've earned something.
So when you've had to fight to get past some people to get somewhere, you expect there to be something cool to find, something to make it worthwhile.
I said July, right?
There are just some things that you just don't go and buy in a store, things that you have to go out and find. That's, I feel, one of the most important aspects of gaming.
Yeah, we're talking about loot and how loot would affect the game, and like what we need right now in Star Citizen to keep people playing. Loot and being able to find stuff through gameplay as opposed to just going and going to a store and stuff to do it instead is definitely something we need to keep people pinned and playing the game.
If there's no tangible reward, whether it's something that you bring away from there or something that you find that maybe leads to something else to discover, that something can be lost in the experience of exploration.
Imagine you go into some dungeon you're excited to explore, and there's NPCs there just kind of standing around, but there's nothing to find. There's crates, but they're empty. There's storage with nothing in it. Not only is it disappointing from a gameplay perspective, you don't get any of the cool loot you were hoping for, but it just doesn't make sense. What were all these people doing there with no food, no supplies, nothing? You want there to be something amazing at the end.
I mean, not even just amazing, but just something to make it so the universe feels more tangible, like people actually lived here. I'm not even thinking about really epic loot, just like stuff you can find and maybe repurpose or sell. Use for yourself or sell somewhere else or give to somebody else, you know?
So we're working on this new system called loot generation.
We have built this system on the foundation of the harvestable system.
That's a cool idle animation.
To empower our designers to set up locations all across the verse to be filled with dynamically generated loot.
They function using a system we've called loot archetypes, which are on-the-fly generated sets of tags.
So the idea is that a designer can lay out a list of tags that they want items in the loot pool to match, and then maybe some that they don't. So you can say, I want things that are tagged with weapon, but not things that are tagged with ammunition. And then what really makes it powerful is it's not just a uniform distribution of, okay, we have all of these potential items, just pick one at random. When the designers are specifying tags to use, they can assign a weight to each one and say, I want rifles with a weight of 5 and I want pistols with a weight of 10, so you're twice as likely to get a pistol in the...
So this is all deep, and this is all using their own dev tools and stuff. The reason why I paused it is because a lot of these, and you might not be able to see it because of the size of our capture here, but while we're in this one scene I can, you can see a whole bunch of really cool looking I suppose parameters. There was one for weight, and I didn't really know how they'd specified weight for items within the game. You can go into the game settings right now when you're playing the game. You can type, I think it's PL show status, and you can see the carried weight that your player has on them. I don't think that carried weight affects your character very much at all at the moment, but maybe at some point encumbrance might actually be part of it, as well as also just being limited for space in general as well.
To each one and say, I want rifles with a weight of 5.
I don't really see them
with a weight of 10.
Basically, choosing null. I don't really see the actual parameters and stuff in there.
So you're twice as likely to get a pistol in this crate.
So
the new armor was there as well, the RSS heavy armor. Oh yeah, that was in the roadmap. They're making a new RSS heavy armor. I believe the heavy armor that's supposed to be 4 is Jeremiah Lee talked about this earlier before, I believe in CitizenCon. He was about different kinds of armor, and essentially right now all the armor is for combat, but he wanted to maybe perhaps explore different armors for, let's say, being a support character or that kind of stuff. So like, you know, it's heavily armored, but maybe perhaps you won't be able to wield weapons, but you can like wield like these larger support items and stuff like that.
We have like full control over how many items spawn, what specifically spawns. We could even, if we wanted to, and I've actually been doing the tagging for this myself, we could actually tell a loot archetype, hey, spawn me a bunch of armor that's red. Your loot archetype could have the weapon.fps.rifle tag as an example, and that would then give you the option of all of the weapons that spawn underneath that, or that are populated underneath that tag structure. And you may then have armor.fps.heavy, which would give you all of the selection of the heavy armors under that. And then it could be gadget.medkit. So you would then have a loot archetype that says, give me any rifle or any heavy piece of armor or any medkit.
This is way more advanced than like what we had. Like in 2.x, you could find Radagast bottles, and you could find like a kind of a cigar as well. You touch it and then you get money. But with this, it's every item in the game down to very specific parameters. So it's really cool, you know?
It's been a lot of work to get it working that way, but all of it sort of works in conjunction with each other, and with some of the future stuff coming down the pipe as well, such as Quanta. The loot generation system actually will read from the
hit carry. I see what it looks like.
We use in the game at the moment. So, let's say you're spawning containers on Hurston.
So before we continue with that, so what's interesting about this, again, if this is placeholder, right? So he's looking at this thing, and the box isn't opening up, and you're not seeing what's inside. Rather, you're seeing this placeholder like icon here. In CitizenCon, we've seen like situations where that's the case, and we've seen situations where the actual box is physicalized, and the stuff inside you can see a physical representation of. I have a feeling like you're gonna see a mixture of this in the verse, and it's not gonna be either or. But for this use case here, it's all like in the menus
that we use in the game at the moment. So, let's say you're spawning containers on Hurston. Your main object container would be Hurston, and then let's say you've got Lorville, which would be L19. And then inside that, you might have, let's say that we expand the city and there's like an abandoned hovel underneath that's maybe occupied by pirates. If Quanta decides, oh, okay, so authorities came, cleared that place out, that place is now no longer a pirate base, it's now storage site for Hurston Dynamics, then all of the containers in that area then might switch to be containing Hurston equipment.
Okay.
Quanta can then determine way up the chain, way at the top, this is how things are now happening because AI has moved in, things have happened, things have changed, and the archetypes and the loot generation system reacts on the fly to that.
So that's really cool for like a reactive loot system that's systemic to like everything going on in the game.
So as to decide this planet has been raided, it's been full of conflict, there's been wars here, like people are leaving in droves because it's not safe to be here anymore. The status of that planet, the richness of that planet lowers as well, to the point where then the loot generation system says, okay, where most of these containers might have been 50 to 60% full as they were, now we're only going to fill them up to like 20 to 30%. It's all about adapting on the fly to where you're at, what you're doing, and seeing what can be.
So, which is why I feel like in-game we're gonna have to have like our own in-game version of this tool they have called Odin, so you can actually see activity in the verse, and you can kind of get an idea of what places have like high levels of activity and high levels of trade and commerce and wealth and that kind of thing as well, to inform you as a player where to go as well.
Where we're at right now is we've got a pretty solid base for internal testing. We're trying out marking up a few different locations with some containers, mainly filled with weapons.
Artist interpretation may not reflect actual shopping experience. So I suppose this is kind of like an example, although this is just an artist interpretation of like what we talked about before about loot being in boxes, and like you had one example of the boxes just being like a menu and then this being physicalized. What's impressive about this is that it's an engine, and what's in that box isn't moving around or shuffling. But this could just be an asset made by the prop team that is just all these guns as one object. We can't tell, we don't know.
And armor at the moment, but we're hoping to expand that to other items in the future.
And we hope that it provides an immersive experience more than anything else, that people can get excited about this sort of thing, that they know that when they go to a planet once, they might go back a few weeks later and it's just completely different.
Let's see what happens. All right, so what's really cool about this is that when they use the inner thought, the box for the inner thought was just the box, which does mean that the guns in the box are separate entities, yet they are still bound to the box and the locations are bound. Maybe because they're using a local like client for this, it's perfect. But if you could see this in the verse, that'd be amazing.
Loot is an essential.
Is that new? So it's not new. I was looking at the left there. You see the Sakura Sun foam dart gun stuff like that. I've never seen it empty before. So who knows? Maybe perhaps these display items and stuff also, when a store runs out of stock, the actual like display items will go away too. Is that 1 or 2 SU? It's 0.5 SU, I think.
Of any MMO, and when it arrives later this year, it'll be one more step towards fulfilling the exploration-based promise of Star Citizen's persistent universe. But up next, we've got a special oops, it's all VFX edition of the Sprint Report, so let's get to it.
Oops, it's all VFX.
To start things off this week, if you remember from our
there we
last
go, look
Sprint
at
report,
that.
we showed how the team had been working on an update to the thruster dust system that converts the existing particles from a radial effect to a directional one that's actually based on the thruster direction to any surface normal it may be hitting at any given moment. Now this causes the effect to change not only by the raycast angle being perpendicular or parallel to the surface, but also the strength of the thruster output, the type of surface itself, and the force of the surrounding wind volume.
Yeah, that's so cool. I remember back when like the Carrack and other vehicles were just flying around with like a ring around them at all times and people were laughing at the game. Like, come on, calm down. Like this is where they were going,
you know? See here how that tech has progressed in the weeks since we showed it. Now, while this update showcases the progress made since then and still has a little ways to go, folks are already thinking about the myriad of tactical uses this feature might have in things like the upcoming Jumptown 2, over bodies of water like rivers and oceans, and even against the soft body objects like those seen in the upcoming colonialism outposts.
Wait, what did he say about Jumptown 2? I missed that.
The progress made since then and still has a little ways to go. Folks are already thinking about the myriad of tactical uses this feature might have in things like the upcoming Jumptown 2, over bodies of water like rivers and oceans, and even against the soft body objects like those seen in the upcoming colonialism outposts.
Okay, like soft body objects like tarps and stuff like that. But so tactical applications for dust, I mean, like we have things like the Valkyrie and its VTOL thrusters and stuff. And yeah, I mean, like right now you drop down on the planet side and then like your troops come out and, you know, they'll be protected somewhat by your shields and with the Teverin Asperia Prowler as well. You know, you have the wings that come out and they can protect people as well. But if you're landing on a dusty planet, then all of a sudden, then the thruster output of your ship kicking up dust then also confers an extra amount of cover to your players. That's actually kind of interesting.
Alpha 3.14 sees the initial implementation of Orison, but the work doesn't stop there. And coming up in a subsequent patch, the VFX team is currently working on tech that uses vector fields around the player character's feet to disturb the various piles of cherry blossom leaves that tend to accumulate around the commercial and residential areas. Now, while the first implementation of this tech will be Orison, the team is already looking ahead to utilizing it in other areas, including on vehicles. So let your imaginations run wild with that one.
Okay, for like things like gravel and stuff, I'm sure. So yeah, I mean, like even though the work is being done on cherry blossoms at the moment, cherry blossoms aren't the only thing that can use the tech that they work on. They make on stuff like that, and you know, like I can't wait until I can kick around a pile of Watsits like this in the future.
All right, not that wild. And while we're talking leaves, the team recently completed a sprint adding rotation effects to GPU screen space colliding particles, utilizing the velocity of an object to determine the amount and size of turn applied to leaves, making for a much more organic looking effect as they blow over the edge of a surface and fall to wherever down below. And we're pleased to report that this feature was working so nicely It actually just went into PTU builds last week for Alpha 3.14.
Oh, dude, that's so cool. So like normally with particle effects, like, you know, you see them like this one here for like the ship, you see them like get generated and then like after a certain amount of distance they disappear. I'm sure that still happens with this, but like they exist for so long now.
Currently in the persistent universe, weapon impacts on ships occur in what's called the ship zone, which causes the impact effects like sparks and such to stick to the ship, meaning it essentially gets carried along with it as it moves forward,
right?
Which looks unnatural.
That's what's happening
here.
here.
In a recent sprint, this was remedied so that now the effects trail behind as the ship moves away from the original point of impact.
That's really cool.
Much as one would expect them to. Now, it's a little thing, but at the core of building an immersive universe are hundreds and hundreds of little things adding up to a universe that functions or behaves in believable and expected ways.
That's rad.
And here's a second look at the same system in Atmo, where you can see the sparks fly up into the air against gravity in the old system, and now falling down to the surface as you'd expect them to in the new.
Oh.
The VFX team is also exploring several different destruction mosaics for the space station orbiting above and the Crossroads of Crime map for Theaters of War.
Okay. All right, so this is for the Crossroads of Crime map in Theaters of War. I know you're thinking, no, Port Olisar is not going to blow up. But what this does mean, however, is that all these other Lagrangian stations and stuff, like, I mean, there's a potential for them to put this tech into those. These stations, so the Crossroads of Crime is a space station like SPK, like any other one that you, as a player, can land on and traverse and stuff, right? So, like, this is going to be so cool if at some point they actually go ahead and they move it into like the verse or something like that, right? They talked about in a jump point a long time ago, they talked about wanting to maybe make space stations as systemic as like space ships with their own power plants and everything else that you can, you know, take offline and destroy and things like that. So I mean, like, I wasn't expecting to see a freaking space station explode in Star Citizen, but I'm excited by this.
These destructions being explored are simulation-based in the Houdini software. These mosaics, utilizing various factors of stiffness and damping ratio, allow for a degree of art direction not normally available. Plus, it just kind of looks cool to see all the different ways the thing can explode, you know?
So does that mean that, like, once this comes out, it's not going to be a canned explosion, or if it is a canned explosion, it'll be one of many different kinds of canned explosions?
Also always cool, lightning. Now previously, lightning across our games suffered from a number of different maladies, including poor performance and poor scaling effects. But due to recent R&D by the team and the use of instanced scale multipliers and ribbons, the team has not only found a way to author these same effects at a wide range of scales, but the use of ribbons reduces the need for high particle counts in the runtime GPU particle system. What's that mean? It means more developers can use more lightning in more areas without destroying their performance budget. And that's especially good news for the upcoming Pyro system and the visual revamp to the Dying Star map in Arena Commander that's currently underway.
Oh, okay. Yes, so for those that don't know, the Dying Star map in Arena Commander is actually set within Pyro. I wasn't expecting like space lightning to be in Pyro, but there you go. Apparently it's going to be featuring heavily in Pyro because it's going to be both in the Storm, that's the Arena Commander map, and also in Pyro itself. I was expecting Lando to talk about a bit about Squadron 42 and the Coil, which is, I think, where I think most people were expecting to see space lightning. But yeah, that's really cool. That's awesome.
In wrapping up our look at VFX this week, the team has returned from a brief hiatus away from fire propagation to create their version of a concept. A cinematic look dev, if you will, at the goals for fire propagation, utilizing the tech features and progress already in hand. What you see here is a basic electrical fire in a relatively high-tech environment, exploring the type of propagation effects the team are currently pursuing. Now, as a test exclusively for how the fire moves and spreads throughout the ship, there are still a number of limiting visual factors here, like the still outstanding shader work that will one day make the fire feel even more alive than it already does. As the fire moves across the white surface that is flammable, you can see it dripping down to ignite the same surface below.
Yes.
While interacting with the black, glass-like surface on the ceiling that is understandably resistant. Combined with the heat and noxious gases affecting players via the actor status system, it's an exciting look ahead at some of the new dangers and hazards players will encounter and have to deal with on a regular basis as Star Citizen's development continues.
Yeah, so again, the word systemic comes into mind. So it's not just about like a ship catching fire and damaging components, but as you can rightfully imagine, like if like let's say plastics and stuff like that catch fire, or like and stuff like that, then it's going to change. It's going to change the air composition as well. You know, it's going to be soot, smog, smoke, all that stuff, and that's going to actively and dynamically affect the room system, so that like, you know, when you press your Moby glass and you'll see the composition of like air change, right? Like and become toxic. So you need to wear your spacesuit now if you're not already and deal with it. And yeah, it's really cool. They've talked about fire propagation before. They have talked about how different materials will also react to the fire differently. But this is really, really cool. Now imagine if there's like a fire extinguisher, or like imagine there's like a rack full of like oxygen tanks or something next to it, and then
and have to deal with on a regular basis as Star Citizen's development continues. But before we let you go, let's jump ahead and see what happens when you ignore the fire and let it go about its business for about half an hour.
So, don't Origin ships have wood in them as well, just because?
So what did we learn this week? Well, we learned that while it's fine to go into a store and buy something from the vendor, there's still something about discovering the item while adventuring that can make it just a little more special. That the work on Origin doesn't end with Alpha 3.14, and that we'll be seeing more of what's coming as this quarter progresses. And just when I think I'm out, those advances to fire propagation pull me back in. Now remember, this quarter we're on the road to Digital CitizenCon, where all kinds of panels and content await for hours full of Star Citizen goodness. That's October 9th, so mark your calendars. For Inside Star Citizen, I'm Jared Huckabee. We'll see you all next week.
All right, so yeah, that was a pretty wild ISC this time around. I mean, that's really cool. Lots of really awesome stuff to see and to talk about. Man, like VFX, of course, it's just like, you know, fancy particles and stuff, and you know, the obvious argument there is, okay, that's nice, that's pretty, that's cool and all, but where's the gameplay? But a lot of the VFX stuff that they talked about, and they, you know, will inform gameplay and will work in order to, you know, make that gameplay all that more immersive. Things like, you know, they said with the VFX for the smoke particles and stuff when you're landing and things like that, that's not just gonna be about, oh wow, in third person I can see this, but also, you know, like if you're somebody who is at like an outpost or something defending a place, then that smoke might blind you from the fact that some people have just left the ship and are now behind a rock or something, and then you have to use your scanners to find them and things like that. You know, this of course is cool and just pretty in general. Yeah, seeing this space station explode was kind of wild. Like, I can't wait to see this Crossroads of Crime thing again. They've said that do not expect Theaters of War anytime soon, because they want to not only get Crossroads of Crime done, but they also want a second thing as well, just so that, you know, there's rotation and there's, you know, like this variety and stuff, so people don't get bored or burnt out of the one scenario. But that's really cool. Lightning was pretty sick too. Obviously, there's actually a weapon in game, the AdScav and the Uberev weapons from the Lightning Company, which you know, fire bolts, but they don't really do this sort of thing. I don't know if they want it to do this sort of thing. Maybe perhaps when that lightning procs and somebody is next to them, that could happen. That could be cool. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to this, to fire propagation and stuff like that, to just basically engineering gameplay and auxiliary roles and stuff in the game, because if a fire like this happens in your multi-crew ship, there's not really much you can really do from the cockpit. You need somebody actively there to deal with this. You might be able to see on your HUD, oh, there's a fire here. Maybe perhaps as a pilot, you could open this hangar and starve the place of O2. That might be a really good way of doing it. Games like FTL and stuff come to mind in how to like deal with things like this. And then obviously you have like just the engineering stuff in general, the conduits and the capacitor gameplay and stuff that might tie into this at some point as well. It's all really cool. You need a Scotty? Hi, you do. You do. All right. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching another, I suppose, discussion and recap of this week's ISC. We'll see you next week for yet another one. Maybe SCL will cover as well, which I believe is coming out today, this Friday. If you did enjoy this and, you know, like watching this with us, with the community and stuff, like, please feel free to like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell if you're watching on YouTube as well. And we'll see you in the next one. Until then, as always, be good.